So I thought I could do something different this time and try and design an Arcane character into the Marvel Rivals style and create the character that way. So the first thing I did was to just choose the character. So I decided to choose Jinx, and then we started with a pose. So in Marvel Rivals, the poses are generally, they're looking towards the camera and they just have that superhero pose. They're not really dynamic action poses, but they are in a way dynamic in the way they are posing in an action or superhero pose. So I started with as you can see, very, very simple, rough gesture drawing. And then I started adding some of the key elements of the character. So you can see that I have this rough sketch. It's very messy at this point, and this is where I started. So after I have the rough sketch done, what I do is, lower the opacity of the sketch and start to create cleaner line art. One of the things that Marvel style has is really clean line art, very well defined. So it follows the comic book style. So I decided to also do that. Clean the line art. Usually I don't do this. So this was something that I spent an extra step on and created that. And then the next thing is really to see, does my silhouette really looks good? And does it really define the character well? And is it easy to recognize the character? And I think in this case it does. Marvel Rival style, really, they focus on the silhouette, and all the characters have really well defined silhouettes that you can recognize them just by the silhouette. So if we just look at Jinx here, and if I just remove all the details and just have it entirely just black, you can see that the silhouette really does show that the character is Jinx. So then after that, the next step was to try and start adding colors. So what I did is just separate every single part that needs to have a different color on a separate layer, and I just started adding the colors. And as you can see, all the flat colors are now in, and then it's time to start rendering. Now, before we start rendering, I just wanted to show the style of rendering that they really follow and what kind of brushes we should use. So I thought we can just do this on a circle. So if we have a sphere, let's say, how do we really render this sphere? The way I see it, you really need to have your brush strokes left in there. They don't really do too much to blend in, and the brush strokes are usually left in there. So let's say if the light is coming from the right this way, let's say the light is coming this way. Oops. Then when we want to render, we can see that some of that brush strokes are left there. So it's not entirely fully rendered in a way that you use a soft airbrush or you, for example, use a blending tool to blend it more. No, it's not. So they really leave those brush strokes in there to give that painterly look to the thing. And I think it's really nice, and I really like it. As you can see here, like this is kind of, you can see my brush strokes are left in there. And then we can just add a piece of highlight maybe. When I try and render, I try and think about this quite a bit and consider this a lot when doing the rendering. The alternative is something that I'm used to, is a really well-defined, you use the airbrush, and you can blend more and more and more to give it that smooth look. Marvel Rivals doesn't have that. It's the brush strokes are left in there to give it that painterly look. So this is typically how I render things. So this is when you do lots of blending, and this is when you leave the brush strokes in there. Obviously, it's good to also still clean it up and do that, but this is just a good idea of what it looks like. So now it's really time to start rendering, and I don't want to show too much of the rendering process because it's just a very repetitive and time-consuming thing. But that's the idea. If you saw the sphere, this is kind of how I render every single part of the painting. So at this stage, this is where I have most of it rendered. Now it's time to add some of the key elements of the style. For example, the backlit. All the characters have that backlit, and it's really, really bright and almost white. And then we add a little bit of that chromatic aberration effect by adding a few colors into that backlit lighting in it. And then the other thing that they do, and I think I should have done that at the beginning, not at the end here, is they have a lot of, line art left into the painting. I tried to keep some of it there. And then they also have some sketch lines that are, imply flow, and some of it are even outside of the character. So I added those there too. I think next time, if I want to do this again, it would be into the sketch itself. So there is another thing that I wanted to show you is how to add these pattern effects. So I decided to just do the halftone effect, which is this pattern that you see here, which is pretty much these dots. And this is something that the Spider-Verse has quite a bit. So the idea is that you first can create any pattern that you want. In this case, I created a circle. So what you do is you just go to create a new file, and you can have it just square, 400 by 400, and you simply just create that pattern that you want. In this case, it's a circle. So then, so once you have the circle, you just, make the background transparent. So then you just select everything. You can just click Control and click on the layer. And then we can just go and center it. I think it was already centered. Then you go Edit, Define Pattern, and then you can call it whatever you want. So we can call it, for example, circle or halftone effect. And I have already done that, so I'm not going to save this. So if we come back here, we can create, let's remove that. We can create a new layer. And then we go to the round brush again. Then we go to brush settings. We go to texture. And then we select that. So it should be there. You select it. And then you can play around with the scale and the depth, right? To get the size that you want. So for example, let's say that. So now if I just use this, it would give me that effect, right? You can play with the scale, give you different sizes. So it's very simple. So then we can just, for example, go do an overlay, select the color that we want. Maybe that's too big. You can reduce the size, and it needs to be subtle. You don't want it to be too obvious. So then we can just come in and add that halftone effect into our painting. You can then delete some of the areas that you don't want it on, and you go from there. And then finally, what I decided to do is also try and do a background effect for this one. If you look at the Marvel Rivals, character sheets on their website, you can see that very graphic vector-like shapes put into the background that imply or show what the character is. So the character is simplified into simple shapes, and then extremely simple shapes. And then you put that in the background, and I did some extra stuff. And then I added a few little minor details to make it look like a character from Marvel Rivals. And here is a reveal of the character. So there we go. I think it turned out pretty well, considering all the things, and it's not really a Marvel character. I put it, and I think if you look at this, it would be a cool collaboration between Arcane and Marvel Rivals, and it looks like it could be part of the game. Let me know what did you think about this type of video, and if you like it to see similar things in the future where I can do a character in a completely different art style. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next.